Imagine trying to build massive generational wealth today.
Right?
Like, what are the prerequisites that immediately come to mind for you? You probably think you need a flawless, heavily optimized resume.
Oh, absolutely.
You definitely need a fancy job title, preferably in tech or high finance or something.
A polished pitch deck.
Exactly. An airtight business plan, an aggressive network of venture capitalists,
Mm.
and above all, a willingness to just grind yourself into the ground for 80, maybe 90 hours a week.
A hustle culture.
Yeah, the hustle. It sounds completely impossible to build an empire without those things, doesn't it?
It does. It goes against everything we're taught.
But what if wealth wasn't actually about grinding at a profession?
Mm-hmm.
What if it was about building a capacity that catches favor when circumstances inevitably shift? What if you could build a staggering financial empire without a resume, without a formal job title, and without ever once submitting a business plan?
It definitely sounds, it sounds counterintuitive to everything we are taught about modern economics and personal finance.
Right.
We are thoroughly conditioned to believe that wealth is the direct, linear result of professional exertion. You input labor, you input professional credentials, and the machine outputs money.
The standard formula.
Exactly. But the historical record we are looking at today presents a completely different architecture of wealth.
Yeah.
It is an architecture built almost entirely on positioning, circumstance, and divine favor.
Okay, let's unpack this, because this deep dive is going to completely reframe how you view success and prosperity.
It really is.
We are exploring a fascinating, incredibly detailed reconstruction of the ancient world's most famous patriarch,
Abraham.
But we aren't looking at him just as a religious figure today, right? We are looking at the stage-by-stage economic reality of his life.
Yes.
We're going to explore exactly how Abraham accumulated vast, almost unfathomable wealth, not through career ambition, not by climbing some ancient Mesopotamian corporate ladder.
Which didn't exist.
Right, which didn't exist,
Yep.
but purely through favor, through volatile circumstances, and by positioning himself, whether knowingly or unknowingly, in God's will.
And to give you, the listener, some context on the notes we're working from today, we are looking at a very specific blend of historical and textual data.
Right, what are our sources?
So we have the explicit textual facts from the book of Genesis, the literal inventory of what Abraham possessed and the geopolitical moves he made.
The raw data.
Exactly. But we are combining those facts with historical reconstructions of ancient Near Eastern economics. We are factoring in the gritty physical realities of pastoral life, royal court politics, caravan logistics.
The stuff that makes it real.
Right. We are focusing strictly on the mechanics of favor, how the wealth actually arrived, how it functioned in the real world, and how it compounded.
We were taking a hard pivot from the modern hustle mindset to an ancient positioning for blessing mindset.
I love that framing.
And this journey really kicks off with what our notes call the Haran exit. Abraham leaves the region of Haran, and the text explicitly notes he leaves, with possessions gathered and people acquired.
Yes.
But here's the thing that trips up my modern brain. He has no profession.
None.
He is not a merchant with a storefront in Damascus.
Yeah.
He isn't a farmer tied to a lucrative plot of land in the Fertile Crescent.
He's not a court official pulling a salary.
Exactly. He is a clan head with a completely portable economy. What does it even mean to be wealthy but unemployed in the ancient world?
That is the perfect place to start, because we have to strip away our modern assumptions.
God.
In that era, a man could be completely professionless in our modern sense and still wield the economic power of a regional governor.
Wow.
Wealth didn't require a salary. It required reproducing assets, human labor, movement rights, and reputation.
Reproducing assets.
Right. Abraham's wealth at this starting stage is not an income stream. It is pure capacity. When the text says people acquired, we have to understand that in a pastoral system, people literally equal wealth.
Wait, if he's not selling goods or manufacturing anything, what are those people actually doing all day? How does having a bunch of people around you translate to wealth?
Because in a pastoral enterprise, your primary asset is your livestock. But livestock is incredibly labor-intensive.
Oh, I see.
If you have more workers, you can manage more animals. If you have more animals, you generate more milk, more wool, more offspring, and more raw goods to trade for necessities like grain or metal tools.
So it scales directly with the headcount.
Directly. And more people also exponentially increases your defense capabilities, your ability to scout for water in an arid climate, and your bargaining power with local chieftains.
So how many people are we talking about when he leaves Haran?
We aren't talking about a massive empire yet. We are looking at a total group leaving Haran of maybe 40 to 80 people.
Okay, fairly small.
Out of those, the actual workers, the servants, the herdsmen, the drivers for the pack animals might be 20 to 45 individuals.
And the rest?
Dependents, children, the elderly, perhaps distant kin attached to the household for survival.
So it's kind of like he has a mid-sized startup staff right out of the gate.
That's a great way to look at it.
But instead of sitting at desks writing code, their entire operational goal is keeping assets alive and moving.
Yes.
And those assets are the possessions gathered. The historical estimates give a starting point of roughly 200 to 600 sheep and goats,
Maybe 20 to 80 cattle.
and 10 to 40 donkeys just to transport the tents, the gear, and the people.
And that is the core mechanism of this initial stage. These assets grow autonomously.
Right.
Abraham doesn't need to be an innovator. He doesn't need to invent a new product. Sheep and goats naturally multiply.
They just do what they do.
Exactly. Even accounting for predators, disease, and the animals they consume for food, a well-managed ancient flock could see a net growth of 10 to 30% per year.
30%. That's
Yeah.
a massive return on investment.
It is. He just needs a highly disciplined household order to keep the system alive while the assets naturally reproduce. Trade happens simply by proximity.
Exchanging their surplus wool and dairy with established towns for grain and pottery, managed entirely by his stewards.
Yes,
So it's like a dividend stock that also has babies.
that is exactly what it is.
He didn't have to do anything in a professional sense to see his wealth grow initially. He just needed mobility and order.
Yeah.
Tents packed efficiently, watches set at night to fend off wolves, herds divided properly so they don't stampede or overgraze.
He essentially created a container.
A container. This is the baseline of being blessable.
Yes.
Outsiders in walled cities might look at him and think, oh, he's a nobody, a wanderer with no throne. But anyone who understood the desert would look at that ordered movement and think, he's incredibly dangerous.
He has disciplined people and reproducing capital.
He is perfectly positioned. But then, almost immediately, a massive crisis forces his hand. Famine hits the land of Canaan.
And a famine for a herding household is an existential threat.
It's game over.
It really is. It means the seasonal grazing completely fails. Herds begin to miscarry and die of starvation. Water points dry up, and the local inhabitants violently defend whatever springs are left.
I can imagine.
Grain prices in the local markets spike to astronomical levels. If you stay in Canaan during a severe famine, you are forced to sell your animals at rock-bottom prices just to buy a handful of grain, and your entire portable economy collapses within months.
So Abraham moving his household down to Egypt is not some strategic business expansion.
No, it is a desperate, terrifying survival move. He's entering Egypt solely because the Nile River system provides a stable, irrigated grain cycle, even when the rest of the Levant is in a catastrophic drought.
He goes into Egypt just trying not to lose his baseline capacity. But then we hit the situation with his wife, Sarah.
Right.
Because of her beauty, she is brought into Pharaoh's palace. And in response, Pharaoh gives Abraham an incredible array of assets.
A staggering amount.
The text explicitly lists sheep, oxen, male donkeys, male servants, female donkeys, and camels. But hold on, from a common sense perspective, why would a king give a massive fortune to a wandering nomad just because he took his supposed sister into the palace?
What's fascinating here is the royal risk management and the geopolitical optics of the ancient world.
Okay.
In that culture, a king taking a woman from a foreign notable's household into his harem required a customary diplomatic bride price, or what we might call a protection gift.
To show off.
Exactly. A king wants to project generosity, wealth, and proper protocol. It protects the king's public honor among his own court. By showering Abraham with wealth, Pharaoh is publicly declaring his own majesty.
But as we know, God strikes Pharaoh's house with plagues because of Sarah.
Yes.
Pharaoh realizes Abraham is actually her husband, confronts him, and kicks the entire camp out of the country. And this is the craziest part to me. He lets them keep the wealth. They get deported, but they keep the payout.
Yes. And that is where the motive of the Egyptian court completely flips. Once the plagues hit, it is no longer about projecting generosity. It is about crisis containment.
Get this guy out of here.
Pharaoh wants this spiritually dangerous foreigner out of his borders immediately, but he sends them out with their wealth intact to avoid further spiritual and political blowback.
So it's basically severance pay.
He is essentially paying them severance and pushing them out the door so they don't leave cursing his kingdom.
Yep.
It's a massive king-driven transfer of wealth motivated entirely by fear and divine intervention.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Think about the no-effort multiplier in this situation.
Yes.
Abraham took minimal action. There is zero record of him starting a trade operation in Egypt. Zero record of him negotiating real estate deals in the Nile Delta.
Nothing.
He entered, terrified of starving. He accepted royal gifts, because you can't exactly say no thank you to an ancient god king without losing your head. And he left when he was ordered to leave by armed guards.
He just existed in the space.
The wealth channel was entirely a product of circumstance and God's favor protecting his household. And look at the specific items he gained. Sheep and oxen are an immediate, massive asset injection into his compounding system.
But the servants?
Right, male and female servants. That seems like the most underrated part of the haul.
Absolutely. We have to view servants in this context not as luxury attendants, but as vital labor throughput.
Back to the math.
Remember our earlier math.
Yeah.
More labor directly equals the capacity to hold and expand much larger herds. Pharaoh gave him the workforce required to maintain the new animals.
And the donkeys.
Pharaoh also gave male and female donkeys, which immediately increases their logistical operational radius. And camels.
Let's talk about the camels.
We cannot overstate the importance of camels in this era. Even a small handful of camels completely changes the shape of a nomadic operation.
Why is that?
They are the ancient equivalent of heavy cargo planes. They carry vastly heavier loads across much longer dry stretches than donkeys ever could, and they bring massive geopolitical prestige.
So Pharaoh didn't just hand Abraham money.
No, he handed him the industrial capacity to manage a significantly larger wealth engine.
He limped in as a refugee and was catapulted into an entirely new economic stratosphere without closing a single deal. Favor literally transferred the wealth of an empire into his lap.
It really did.
And that dynamic sets up his return to Canaan. The text tells us Abraham comes back up from Egypt, and he is now very rich in livestock, in silver, and in gold.
Yes.
But surely you can't just drop 1,000 extra animals and dozens of new servants into a camp overnight without breaking something, right?
You're exactly right, and that is why this return phase is all about consolidation.
Consolidation.
You can't just receive royal gifts and magically be sustainably wealthy. You have to integrate them into your operational systems.
That makes sense.
The newly acquired Egyptian servants have to be vetted, trained, and assigned roles. The new Egyptian livestock has to be carefully folded into the existing herd blocks, checking for disease and managing the breeding cycles.
You can't just mix them all together.
No, it would be chaos. This consolidation phase is what turns a sudden, chaotic windfall into a durable, mobile economy. Furthermore, this is where we see the explicit introduction of silver and gold into his portfolio.
And just to clarify for everyone listening, we aren't talking about chests full of stamped gold coins with a king's face on them.
No, coinage didn't exist yet.
Right.
This portable wealth would likely have been leather-wrapped bundles of weighed silver, perhaps cast into rings or small ingots, stored in heavy, strong boxes that were handled exclusively by Abraham or his chief steward.
So why is silver and gold so important if his wealth is in animals?
Silver and gold are absolutely crucial at this stage because they act as economic shock absorbers.
Shock absorbers.
Think about it. Herds are incredibly volatile. They're vulnerable to drought, disease, and predators. But if you have raw silver, you can buy grain from city-states during the next drought without being forced to sell off your reproductive assets at a catastrophic loss.
So it's a safety net.
Exactly. You can pay compensation quickly to settle local disputes. You become fundamentally insulated against the harsh environment.
I want you to really picture the social fallout of this return. Abraham went down to Egypt as a desperate guy fleeing a drought. He comes back up traveling by stages, which is a textual clue that his operation is now so massive it moves slowly.
In planned logistical blocks.
Right, with advanced scouts and rear guards. He rolls back into the Canaanite hill country, incredibly rich from a foreign palace. People around him are definitely whispering.
Oh, without a doubt.
His own herdsmen are looking around the campfire thinking, God actively protected us against Pharaoh. The Canaanite locals watching from their city walls are probably thinking this foreigner caused palace trouble in the most powerful empire on earth and walked out paid.
Did he strike a dark deal?
Is he divinely protected? Is he a geopolitical manipulator?
His reputation is radically shifting. He is now recognized as a major regional player.
And that profound change in status and sheer mass is exactly what triggers the next major phase of his life.
Because growth creates problems. Because explosive, exponential growth rarely happens without creating intense structural pressure on your existing systems. The container eventually becomes too small.
The container breaks.
The text tells us that the land could not support both Abraham and his nephew Lot dwelling together because their possessions were so great. Their herdsmen actually start fighting right in front of the local Canaanites and Perizzites who are already occupying the region.
To our modern minds, we read about the herdsmen fighting and we tend to moralize it. We think, oh, what a shame. The family couldn't get along. They got greedy.
Right.
But there is a gritty reality to pastoral mechanics here. This isn't a petty family squabble. It is a hard economic bottleneck.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the phrase "the land could not support them" is not a metaphor. It is a harsh mathematical reality.
How so?
A pastoral economy is constrained primarily by three things: water access, the grazing radius around that water, and neighbor competition. In the rugged hill country of Canaan, water is not uniformly distributed. Wells and springs are vital choke points. Imagine one reliable spring near their combined camp. It has a specific flow rate and can only physically water a certain number of animals per day.
And now there are thousands of new animals from Egypt.
Exactly. When two massive, newly expanded herds arrive repeatedly at the same spring, queues form. The animals are thirsty and agitated, the sun is beating down, tempers among the herdsmen rise.
That's a powder keg.
Guards get involved to push the other side back. If animals don't drink on schedule, they weaken, and the wealth literally dies.
It's like having way too many cars and not enough parking spaces, except if the cars don't park, they drop dead.
That's a perfect analogy.
And it's not just the water itself, it's the grass in the immediate vicinity of the water.
Yes. If you share a water source, your grazing circles inherently overlap. And once that overlap reaches a critical density, both sides experience severely reduced pasture.
So they have to walk further.
The animals have to walk further to find fresh grass, burning calories they desperately need. They lose weight. Disease risk increases exponentially when animals are packed together.
Miscarriages spike.
Death rates climb. On top of all that, the text explicitly mentions the local Canaanites and Perizzites are already there.
They aren't in an empty land.
No, this means Abraham and Lot are operating amidst established agricultural settlements and strict territorial expectations. They can't just spread out infinitely into the horizon without paying heavy political costs or sparking a regional war with the locals.
Wow.
Their workers are fighting over daily survival mechanics. Who reached the spring first, whose sheep trampled whose pasture, who lingered too long at the trough?
The conflict is actually a measurable, flashing red indicator of their explosive growth. Lot has become incredibly wealthy just by being in Abraham's orbit. The blessing has literally spilled over onto him.
Yes.
But now the sheer mass of the wealth has become too heavy for their shared operational container. The growth has exceeded their combined carrying capacity.
The system has to change.
Abraham doesn't have to go to a whiteboard and invent a new corporate strategy. The sheer force of the wealth he accumulated through divine favor in Egypt is now violently demanding a structural change, which forces the separation.
Abraham recognizes that they must restructure the enterprise into two independent operations to survive the pressure.
So what does he do?
He proposes they separate to avoid conflict, and he gives Lot the first choice of land. Lot looks down at the well-watered Jordan Valley, which the text says looked like the garden of the Lord, and he chooses that.
And Abraham.
Abraham takes the rugged hill country and settles near the Oaks of Mamre at Hebron.
Now, from a purely short-term, cutthroat business perspective, Lot makes the brilliant move, right?
Without a doubt, Lot chooses the economically lush zone. Better watered land allows for a much higher stocking density.
More animals per acre.
Exactly. That means you can support significantly more animals per square kilometer for longer seasons with far fewer losses. It means less forced movement for the herds, which reduces travel stress on the animals, leading to easier breeding and higher milk yields.
And he's close to the cities.
Right. Plus, being near the established cities of the valley, like Sodom, means immediate market proximity for trading wool and dairy for luxury goods. Lot made the mathematically logical choice for immediate wealth maximization.
But Abraham's wealth doesn't operate on standard mathematical logic.
No, it doesn't.
It continues to increase through circumstance and positioning. He doesn't aggressively grasp for the best land. He trusts the favor that made him rich in the first place.
He trusts the source.
And ironically, by taking the lesser land, he radically increases his capacity. By removing that internal friction with Lot's camp, Abraham's loss rates instantly drop.
Instantaneously.
There are no more daily negotiations over the spring, no more herdsman brawls, no more divided attention. It's one unified, streamlined command structure.
And practically speaking, God tells Abraham to look north, south, east, and west, and to walk through the length and breadth of the land.
He gets the whole range.
With Lot gone, Abraham is now free to range much wider without coordinating with the second massive camp. He can experiment with seasonal migration routes, expanding his grazing range across the entire hill country.
And range equals capacity.
A wider, undisputed grazing range equates directly to a higher carrying capacity over the long term. He can keep more animals alive year-round. Furthermore, he positions himself geographically at Haran, near the Oaks of Mamre.
Why is that specific spot so important?
This isn't just a picturesque place to pitch a tent. It provides crucial shade, environmental stability, and defensibility. Most importantly, it brings him into vital local alliances with the Amorite brothers Mamre, Eshcol, and Aner.
So he's building a network.
He is positioning himself in God's will geographically and economically. He is gaining the exact stability and local relationships he desperately needs for the violent phase that is about to come.
Which leads us into the reality of ancient wealth. Because once you have massive wealth, your biggest problem is no longer acquiring it. Your biggest problem is keeping someone with a sword from taking it.
Exactly. Protection.
The text tells us that a massive regional war breaks out. A coalition of eastern kings sweeps through the valley, defeats the local kings, and captures Lot, along with all his possessions and the people of Sodom.
The whole city.
Abraham hears about it, and he fields 318 trained men born in his house. They pursue the raiders all the way to Dan, execute a night attack, defeat the coalition, and recover absolutely everything. All the possessions, Lot, the women, and the people.
Let's pause and do the demographic math on those 318 men, because it is staggering.
Yeah, let's break that down.
If he has 318 fighting-age males who were born in his house.
Wait, born in his house, not mercenaries.
Exactly. Meaning these are not hired mercenaries from a local town. They're a deeply loyal, multi-generational internal security force. How big is his entire operation?
Right, I was thinking about this. If you account for the men who are too old to fight, the young boys, the women, and the non-combatant laborers, he has to be managing a small city.
Historical demographers provide a very conservative multiplier for this kind of pastoral group. For every trained fighting man, there are roughly 3 to 4 dependents and non-combatants.
Okay.
To field an elite strike force of 318 men, Abraham's total household population at this stage must be somewhere between 1,000 and 1,500 people.
He is literally the wandering CEO of a mid-sized corporation.
He really is.
Imagine being one of his herdsmen. Yesterday you were pulling a stubborn goat out of a ravine, and today you were doing ancient special ops in the dark against a coalition of kings.
It sounds wild, but in a pastoral economy, your entire bank account walks on 4 legs and sleeps out in the open.
It's totally exposed.
It is entirely vulnerable to raiders, rustlers, and lions. A household of this scale produces a disciplined, hyper-vigilant security force organically. The herds have to be protected 24 hours a day, so tactical training is just a normal extension of pastoral life.
So they were already ready.
They are doing watch rotations, practicing with spears, slings, and bows, and learning how to move silently at night to track lost animals. When Abraham pursues the coalition, he isn't dragging 1,500 people and 1,000 sheep with him.
Right, he leaves the camp behind.
He takes a highly mobile, lethal strike unit, the 318 men, a small pack train of donkeys, dried rations, and water skins. And they utilize those local alliances we mentioned. Mamre, Eshcol, and Aner go with him.
Those guys he just aligned with at Hebron.
Yes. These alliances are critical infrastructure. They provide regional intelligence, safe passage through territories, and additional manpower that discourages the enemy from turning around and crushing them.
And the night attack itself requires insane discipline. You can't just yell and charge in the dark with a chaotic mob.
Friendly fire would be disastrous.
Exactly. That requires intense operational communication to create panic in the enemy camp without accidentally routing your own guys. He defeats them and recovers everything. But here is the takeaway for you, the listener. Wealth isn't just what you make, it's what you don't lose. Yes.
The recovery of the physical goods is amazing. But the real wealth multiplier here is the massive reputation upgrade Abraham secures. He proves to the entire region that he isn't just a rich, soft target wandering the hills. He is lethally dangerous.
He creates a permanent psychological deterrent against any future raids on his camp.
That deterrence factor is what protects his wealth engine for the rest of his life. But the immediate aftermath of this battle is equally vital to his economic standing.
It is.
After the battle, as he is returning, Abraham is met in the valley of Sheva by Melchizedek, the king of Salem and a priest of God Most High. Melchizedek brings out bread and wine and publicly blesses Abraham. In response, Abraham gives him a tenth of everything, a 10% tithe of all the recovered spoils.
Yes.
So what does this all mean? Why the bread and wine? Is this just an ancient victory party?
It has deep socioeconomic function. This isn't just a ceremonial snack. Abraham's men have just executed a high-speed pursuit spanning potentially over 100 miles.
100 miles. Followed by a chaotic night battle and a tense march back south guarding thousands of panicked captives and scattered livestock. They were physically exhausted, dehydrated, and running on adrenaline.
They must have been dead on their feet.
Tired troops make mistakes, and mistakes lead to lost animals and escaping captives, which immediately reduces the recovered value of the wealth. The bread and wine provide a massive, immediate calorie injection.
Oh, it's logistical support.
It forces a controlled tactical pause so Abraham can hydrate his men, manage the aftermath, and prevent post-victory asset leakage. But the public blessing is the real geopolitical turning point.
Right, because in an honor-based ancient society, who blesses you matters immensely.
Precisely. Melchizedek publicly frames Abraham's victory not as a lucky raid, but as a direct deliverance by God Most High. This is legitimacy capital.
Legitimacy capital, like that.
It signals to all the surrounding city-states and paranoid kings that Abraham is not a random opportunistic warlord trying to carve out a new kingdom. He is divinely sanctioned, acting with moral authority.
Which protects him from being ganged up on.
Exactly. This elevates Abraham far above a standard professional status. He has no formal civic office, he sits on no throne, but this blessing acts as a universally recognized stamp of authority. It means other kings won't easily form a preemptive coalition to wipe him out. His trade terms in local markets will improve dramatically, and his access to vital territory becomes highly negotiable.
And then Abraham turns around and gives away 10% of the recovered goods to Melchizedek. I always wondered about the ROI of giving in this context. Why give away wealth you just risked your life to recover?
Because doing it publicly proves Abraham's hands are clean.
Ah.
Cynical observers in the valley might look at his victorious clan and think, they're just raiders who stole the loot from the original raiders.
But a massive public tithe to a recognized priest king shows utter accountability.
It buys reputation protection.
It strengthens his alignment with a high-status, neutral, regional figure whose influence can open doors and mediate future disputes. It is a calculated, brilliant move of wealth preservation through submission to God's authority, which sets up the stark, incredible contrast of his next interaction.
The king of Sodom.
The king of Sodom, who just got his people and his wealth handed back to him by Abraham, tells Abraham, "Give me the persons, but take the goods for yourself." Abraham flatly refuses. He raises his hand to the Lord and says he won't take a thread or a sandal strap, lest the king of Sodom ever say, "I have made Abram rich."
Such a powerful moment.
He only allows when his young men have already eaten, and the fair share for his allies. Let's think about this from a survival standpoint. Turning down free food, luxury textiles, gold, and livestock in a volatile desert environment seems incredibly reckless. Was this just pride? Why turn down free money?
Because of a toxic ancient concept called patron credit.
Patron credit.
In that world, gifts are never truly free. Massive gifts create heavy bonds of obligation and political leverage. If Abraham takes those goods, the king of Sodom essentially owns a piece of Abraham's narrative.
He owns them.
Sodom can claim to the entire region, we made Abraham the powerhouse he is today. He operates on our funding. And with that claim comes future political taxes. Sodom could demand military help in their next war, they could demand tribute, or they could force compliance in trade routes.
It's exactly like taking seed money from a notoriously meddlesome, toxic venture capitalist.
That is a perfect comparison.
Sure, you get the cash injection today, but now they are sitting on your board, dictating your product roadmap and demanding you fire your best people. Reputation control is economic control. If Abraham is viewed as Sodom's vassal, his independence is destroyed.
Yes.
Other kings will treat him with deep suspicion, and rivals of Sodom might justify attacking Abraham's herds just to hurt Sodom.
This raises an important question about leverage. Abraham can afford to refuse this massive wealth because his wealth is already deeply secure from the previous stages of divine favor.
The Egypt money.
The Egypt transfer, the compounding herd growth, the silver reserves, the military capacity. He is financially stable enough to protect his total independence. He uses extreme, legally binding wording, not a thread or a sandal strap, to remove absolutely all loopholes.
This is no confusion.
He prevents any future rumors that he secretly kept a cut. He protects the narrative that God alone, not the corrupt king of Sodom, is the source of his prosperity. It is wealth growth through strategic refusal. He avoids a seductive deal that would have heavily taxed his future freedom for a present gain.
It's a masterclass in protecting the source narrative of your wealth. He leaves millions on the table to keep his soul and his operational freedom intact.
Yeah.
And this fierce independence serves him perfectly as we move into the next phase.
The incident with Abimelech.
Right. Abraham journeys toward the territory of Haran, which brings us to another ruler, King Abimelech. And we see an almost surreal repeat of the favor through circumstance pattern.
It's almost exactly like Egypt.
Abimelech takes Sarah into his harem, unaware of her true status because Abraham used the exact same half-truth he used in Egypt, claiming she was his sister. God dramatically intervenes in a dream, warning Abimelech he is a dead man.
A terrifying warning.
Abimelech panics, confronts Abraham, returns Sarah, and pays Abraham massive compensation. Sheep, oxen, male and female servants, 1,000 pieces of silver, and crucially, open access to his land.
It is the Egypt Catapult all over again, but with a significant geopolitical upgrade. Abimelech is doing extreme risk management. He's paying heavily to remove a divine existential threat from his nation and to restore his public honor among his own terrified servants.
He has to save face.
He has to prove publicly that he completely corrected the wrong against this powerful prophet. So he provides another massive asset injection. More sheep and oxen to compound the herd's genetic diversity, more servants to increase labor throughput. But the biggest gift here is what we can call the access multiplier.
The access multiplier.
Abimelech tells Abraham, "Behold, my land is before you, dwell where it pleases you."
Operating permission. We don't think about this today because we just buy a piece of land and stay there. But for a nomad, operating permission is a massive wealth multiplier.
Huge.
Permission means you aren't fighting local militias for grass. It guarantees safe access to prime grazing corridors, and it gives you political cover when disputes inevitably arise with local shepherds. It translates directly into lower loss rates and a higher carrying capacity for the herds.
And then there's the silver.
The 1,000 pieces of silver given to vindicate Sarah. The text makes it clear this is major, major money. This gives Abraham incredibly deep liquidity. It makes his massive household practically famine-proof. If things go bad, he has a hard currency to buy grain from Egypt or Phoenicia, secure treaties, or hire specialized labor without liquidating a single reproducing animal.
He went from a potential catastrophic disaster, losing his wife and the mother of the promised heir, to an even higher plateau of wealth purely through ruler-to-foreigner compensation orchestrated by God.
It's wild.
Which leads us immediately to how this fluid wealth gets grounded into permanent infrastructure.
Beersheba.
Yes. They are at a place that will become known as Beersheba. A tense dispute arises because Abimelech's servants have violently seized a well that Abraham's men dug. Abraham complains directly to Abimelech, they make a formal covenant, and Abraham sets apart 7 ewe lambs from the flock.
7 ewe lambs.
He gives them to Abimelech as a witness that he, Abraham, dug the well. They name the place Beersheba, the well of the oath, and Abraham plants a tamarisk tree.
I always get stuck on the 7 lambs. Why give the king sheep for a well you already dug yourself?
We have to emphasize how absolutely critical this stage is for ancient wealth. In a pastoral economy, water is the engine room. It dictates absolutely everything.
You mentioned that earlier with the herdsmen fighting.
A well isn't a modern convenience where you turn on a tap. It is the absolute limit of your carrying capacity. Without it, animals weaken, milk production drops to zero, breeding collapses, and you are forced to move your entire camp of 1,500 people.
It's the lifeblood.
A deep well is like controlling the local Federal Reserve and the only fuel supply simultaneously. And wells get seized constantly in frontier zones because water disputes are, at their core, power disputes. Abimelech's men probably occupied it and threatened violence. If Abraham loses that well, his wealth growth violently halts.
So what does he do?
So he uses legal technology. The covenant acts like a non-aggression pact. But the 7 ewe lambs are a brilliant legal mechanism. It's a public receipt in a world without paper contracts.
A receipt.
It's not a payment to buy the well. It's a memorable, physical token tied to a sworn oath. It signals to everyone that if this well is disputed 5 years from now, the king himself holds the symbolic receipt and the witness exists.
It's a small, highly controlled cost.
Yeah.
7 young sheep to permanently secure a high-value infrastructure asset that multiplies productivity for decades. Secured undisputed water radically lowers animal mortality rates during the dry season. But the final touch is planting the tamarisk tree. This isn't just landscaping. A tamarisk tree takes years to grow and provide shade. It is a long-term signal to the region. It says, I am establishing a stable, semi-permanent base here. I am not passing through.
Exactly.
A stable base allows for highly predictable grazing rotations, better security planning, and consistent trade routines.
Right.
It reduces the brutal physical toll on the servants and the gear. This infrastructure turns vulnerable, roaming pasture wealth into sustainable, compounding capital.
He is literally and metaphorically setting roots, which makes the transition to the final stages of his life so profound. We move to the Machpelah purchase.
Right, the turning point.
Sarah passes away at the age of 127 in Hebron. It is a moment of deep personal grief, but economically and strategically, it forces a massive pivot. Abraham needs a permanent burial place. He goes to the local Hittites, specifically a man named Ephron, and publicly negotiates at the city gate to buy the cave of Machpelah and its surrounding field.
For 400 shekels of silver, weighed out at the current merchant standard.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is a revolutionary shift in the nature of his wealth. Up to this exact moment, his wealth has been highly mobile. Herds of animals, thousands of servants, massive tents, strong boxes of silver. Even the well at Beersheba was dependent on a political treaty with a local king.
Everything was on the move or conditional.
Well, but this purchase converts mobile liquid wealth into a permanent fixed asset. He is buying legally recognized, unalienable real estate in the Promised Land, and the harsh circumstance of death is what forced him to secure this permanent foothold.
Because you can't be nomadic with a gravesite.
A burial site is the most culturally defensible reason for a powerful foreigner to buy land without immediately threatening the local rulers.
And notice the brilliant legal maneuvering. Ephron, in front of all the city elders, tries to offer the field and the cave as a gift. He says, "No, my lord, hear me. I give you the field, and I give you the cave that is in it." But Abraham forcefully refuses and insists on paying the full exorbitant price. Because of exactly what we learned with the king of Sodom. If it is a gift, it has cultural strings attached. A gift of land in ancient Hittite law can be recalled, taxed, or redefined later as a temporary loan by Ephron's heirs. It creates a lingering honor debt.
Which he wants no part of.
By paying 400 shekels of silver, weighed out publicly at the city gate in front of dozens of witnesses, Abraham secures a clean, undeniable title.
It proves he is a major economic player. Weighing silver current among the merchants implies Abraham isn't just a shepherd. He has access to high-grade, trade-standard silver and recognized weights. He's transacting at the highest levels of international commerce without actually being a merchant by profession.
It's official.
That public gate negotiation is the ancient equivalent of an airtight, notarized contract filed with the county clerk. Everyone hears the boundaries, the price, the transfer of ownership. This permanent asset massively reduces the volatility of his empire. He now has a recognized, legally binding place in the land's memory. The wealth has transitioned from something that can be entirely stolen in a single night raid into legacy capital that endures for generations.
Which brings us to the ultimate test of any empire: intergenerational security. Because as history shows us repeatedly, vast fortunes can disappear in a single generation if the heirs fight, if the assets get fragmented, or if vital alliances crumble.
Happens all the time.
Look at Alexander the Great. He conquered the known world, but because he didn't secure his succession, his empire shattered into warring factions the moment he died.
Okay.
Abraham is old, and he is determined not to let that happen.
So what is his strategy?
He sends his oldest, most trusted chief servant with 10 camels and choice luxury gifts back to his kin network in Mesopotamia to find a wife for his son Isaac. And the text carefully notes that Abraham gave all that he had to Isaac, while giving smaller, distinct gifts to his other sons and intentionally sending them far away to the east.
This is the ultimate wealth preservation strategy. Let's look at the marriage alliance first. By insisting Isaac marry within the established kin network back in Haran, Abraham is drastically reducing the risk of internal cultural conflict, and he is securing safe passage and trade networks based on shared customs.
And sending the chief servant with 10 camels.
We talked about camels earlier.
Right. Sending 10 of them on a 400-mile journey is a massive public flex of logistical power. It signals to the kin network that Abraham is not some minor, struggling herder who barely survived Canaan. He has elite transport capacity, luxury goods, and serious, undeniable stability.
The servant literally stands in front of the family and gives a verbal testimony of Abraham's wealth. Flocks, herds, silver, gold, male and female servants, camels, and donkeys, framing it all explicitly as God's immense blessing.
It acts exactly like presenting an audited financial statement before a major corporate merger. It proves to the prospective family that sending their daughter to join this household is not a risk. It is highly advantageous and secure.
And Abraham's household systems are so phenomenally sound, so deeply built over decades of trial and error, that he doesn't even have to go on this critical mission himself. His delegated leadership handles the most important transaction of the next generation perfectly.
But the inherited structuring is the final, ruthless stroke of genius. He gives absolutely everything. The core estate, the breeding herds, the water rights, the alliances, to Isaac. Total concentration of the main estate into one single heir.
Which completely avoids the catastrophic risk of splitting the core herd base into smaller, weaker units that could be easily devoured by regional rivals or destroyed by a single bad drought.
He keeps the mass together.
And by giving generous starter capital gifts to the sons of his concubines, Ishmael and the sons of Keturah, and intentionally relocating them eastward while he is still alive and capable of enforcing his will, he proactively prevents a bloody succession war. He removes the competing claims that would inevitably destroy the wealth from the inside. He ensures the blessing doesn't scatter to the winds.
It is truly incredible to step back and look at this. Over these distinct, painful, triumphant stages, we have watched a man without a formal profession, without a resume, without a traditional career path, build a compounding economic empire that literally changed human history.
He didn't do it through aggressive business tactics. He didn't do it by grinding 80-hour weeks in a Mesopotamian market.
No, he did it by building his internal capacity, his household systems, his discipline, his people. He let circumstance, even desperate ones like famine, royal kidnapping, and death, move him into new geopolitical positions.
He allowed divine favor to enrich him beyond measure, and he used brilliant legal and logistical structure to protect the blessing once it arrived.
It fundamentally challenges our modern assumptions about how prosperity is actually generated and sustained over time.
It suggests that operational readiness, intense personal integrity, and positioning yourself in alignment with God's will are far more powerful long-term wealth generators than mere frantic professional exertion.
It really makes you think about how we operate today. I know I fall into this trap constantly. We are so obsessed with the resume, the LinkedIn updates, the daily grind that we spend almost zero time building our actual capacity.
We focus on the input of labor, but we ignore the container.
Exactly. Reading through these ancient mechanics, I realized that if massive, unexpected favor actually did arrive in my life tomorrow, my operational container is probably too broken or too small to hold it. The wealth would just leak out through stress, bad decisions, or lack of discipline.
This raises an important question for all of us about where we derive our ultimate security. Are we trusting our own frantic efforts to control every variable, or are we cultivating a life, a household, and a character that is fundamentally blessable?
I love that phrase, fundamentally blessable. I want to leave you, the listener, with one final provocative thought to mull over on your own. Something that builds on this incredible journey, but pushes it even further down the timeline of history.
Okay.
Think back to the Machpelah Purchase, that burial cave in Hebron. By insisting on paying full market price for that land, by locking his wealth into that specific rocky piece of dirt, Abraham didn't just buy a tomb for his wife. He gave his descendants a physical, legal anchor.
An anchor.
400 years later, when his descendants were enslaved in Egypt, completely stripped of their wealth, their dignity, and their freedom, it was the memory of that legally owned plot of land in Canaan that psychologically compelled them to return. His final, calculated financial transaction literally dictated the geography and the movement of the next millennium of human history.
Incredible.
So as you go about your week, ask yourself, what are the long-term anchors you are buying today?